All right, hey everyone, welcome to our live stream today. My name's Jordan. I'm here at Transformation Earth Music. I'm a guitar instructor and general music instructor. And today we're going to be going over string bending on guitar. And we're going to look at a few different kinds of string bends, but mostly how to get your string bending technique really good, and a lot of different ideas for how to use your string bending in a creative way. So I'll give you some kind of structured little ideas to get started, and then that'll give you a place to start so you can experiment with the string bending. But it's nice to have a little starting point. So let's go ahead and take a look here. And before we do that, I just want to let you know, if you're watching the replay, you can go ahead and put your comments in the comment section, or your questions in the comment section, any questions you have about what we're doing here right now. And if you're in the live chat, go ahead and ask your questions now. We'll try and address them. And so all of your questions are really just for me to get an idea of where you're at, so I can address what you want to look at. And then also you can give ideas for future live streams, so we can kind of make even a whole live stream on a topic or something that you want to look at and go over. So these streams are for you guys. So let's go ahead and get started here. So we're just going to look at the technique for string bending first. So for the technique, and let's see, just look at the time here. Yeah, okay. So for technique, what you want to do on a bend is you want to have your fingers on the same string. So we're going to put your ring finger on the 3rd string on the 7th fret. And then you're going to have your pointer and your middle finger also on that same string right behind it. And then you're going to have them at an angle like this. So you're not going to start like this horizontal. You're going to have them at an angle like that. The reason why is if they're started at an angle, then when you bend, then they end up parallel and you have room to bend them. If you start at an angle, you don't have any room to bend. And then that's one of the reasons a lot of times people end up just pushing the string. But it's not a string push, it's a string bend. Even though that does bend the string, right? But that's not the technique we want. So the way you do it is you rotate your wrist kind of like this. It's like you're opening a door handle. So that kind of rotation on the wrist. And that's something you have to work at. But you're just doing this rotation like that. So it gives all this leverage to your ring finger. It kind of pushes your ring finger up. And the other fingers are there kind of for support. But this rotation in the wrist is where you feel the power coming from, where you feel the angle. Or not the angle, where you feel the movement or the motion. So that's what you want to feel. Okay? All right? And then your thumb can be over the top. That'll kind of give you some support as you're bending. And then the kind of bend we're going to be doing today is a full step bend, or a whole step bend, or a full bend. Different names. So you're going to be going this note up to this note. So on guitar, that's up 2 frets, which is a whole step or a full step. 2 frets up. Da, da. So you're playing this first note, and you're going to that second note. So that's what the bend is doing. You're going from the first note to the second note. And if we do it kind of slow, you can hear all those notes in between. Just like a voice. Because the guitar is a vocal instrument. We're really imitating a singing voice. We're trying to make your guitar sing just like a voice, like a vocal instrument. And so that's what string bending allows you to do. It allows you to get all those notes in between. So you can get all those notes. Instead of just here to here, da, da, you can get all the notes in between. Da. That's what gives it that vocal quality. Makes it sound really unique. Okay, so that's what you're going for. And so the thing to practice, besides those things we looked at on the wrist and everything, is you're trying to get that pitch right there. Oops, that one's a little bit off, huh? There it is. So that's how you can check yourself, actually. Play that note. Should sound the same as over there. So yeah, so if you got it right there, then in pitch, they're the same sounding note, then you know you got it right. And you're trying to memorize the feel. for where the bend is at. Memorize where you're feeling it, where it feels like in your hand. And I think that works best. Sometimes people want to memorize where it's at, but you're not always going to be like looking where you're playing and kind of memorizing where the bend is at. You just want to get the feel of it. That's what it feels like. So even if your eyes were closed, you could always get there. So that takes practice, a lot of practice. But when you practice enough, you'll be able to just eventually find it. So that's the basics of doing a bend, full step bend. So we're going to look at where are the good spots to do a full step bend in just one shape or one position of the A minor pentatonic. So like if we're in A minor, and then we play the pentatonic, in that shape, we're going to see where the bends are. So if we go start from the root note to the next root note an octave higher, then we're just going to go 2 notes up the scale. That's where we've been bending. So that's where the first bend is at. Okay, so we know that one. Another bend is if you keep going up the scale, right there, you can bend that one up a whole step. The reason why is because you're really just going up to the next note in the scale. So if we were just keep going up, you can see that's the next note in the scale. So it's also over here. So since it's over there, that means we can bend up to it. So instead of just playing up the scale like this, we can play it up like this. So we're really just still going up the scale, but we're getting up with the bend. But so that's basically how you can know where the bends are at, because they're just going up to the next note in a scale. So since this goes up a whole step, that next note in the scale, we know we can put a bend there, a whole step or a full step bend. Okay? And then another spot you can do a bend is on the first string, because if we were to go up the scale and keep going higher up the pentatonic, minor pentatonic, there's a note right there. So here to here is another full step bend. That means you can do a full step bend there because you're just going up the scale again. So instead of that, you can go just bend up, just like that. So you can try those out. They feel a little bit different on each string, but you just got to get used to it. Just check the pitch. Yeah, that one you got to kind of bend up a lot to get it. I'm finding. Okay, and then once you know where all those bends are at, what you want to do is start experimenting. So here's where you can have some little kind of structured exercises to help you get started if you're not sure how to solo or how to improvise or what to do with all these bends in the minor pentatonic. One way to start with is play a few notes from the pentatonic and then put a bend at the end. So bend at the end, you call this one. So okay, so just played a few notes. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Da, 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 da. Okay, you could try that on the second string. Just playing a few notes, put a bend on the end. Right on the first string, a few notes, then a bend on the end. All right, so you just play around with that, and then you can switch it around. Put the bend at the front, and then play some notes. So now you got the bend at the beginning, and then a few notes from the minor pentatonic. Same thing on the second string. Same thing on the first string. Bend, and then a few notes. Bend, and a few notes. Okay, so you play around with each of those. Then try making a bend sandwich. So you're going to have a bend at the beginning, a few notes in the middle, and then a bend at the end. We just did a bend and some notes and a bend. You can try the same thing on the second string. Same thing on the first string. Bend and some notes, then bend. So you play around with those, and then you can put them all together, mix them up. And then try mixing up the bends on the different strings together. So, right? So all I'm doing is just playing those bends at different places, and then in between each of those bends, playing a few notes on the minor pentatonic. So bend, play some notes, and another bend, and the last bend. So you just try that out, then you got all kinds of ideas. You can try just going up the scale. So all I did was note, first note, second note, third note, bent up to the next note, play that note, next note, bent up to the next note, play the next note, right? That sounds pretty nice. You can even do it with going right to the bend without playing the note first and then bending, but just bending right up. Do it backwards. So that you got all kinds of ideas there. And then now we're going to look at the pre-bend and release. So this is kind of the opposite. Instead of bending up, starting lower note and bending up, start at the higher note and then release it. So this is what this one's like. So you can hear now we're just starting at the pre-bent note, the bent note. Right? Starting there and then releasing it. This one's the second stage because this one's a little bit harder than the first one because now you got to know where that pre-bent note is at. You got to have it in pitch. So you got to really get good at doing the other bends first before you memorize where that's at. And if you have it memorized, then you can start there. And then you play it and release it. And you can do slow release or a quick release. But either way, make sure you're getting all the notes in between, whether you get them all slowly or all quickly. Make sure you don't release your finger, because if you release your finger, you cut it short. So make sure you keep your finger close to the fret, like you always want to do on guitar, and then get all those notes. So you pre-bend it and release it. So I'm only picking one note, just the first note. Picking that note and then releasing. Then you can try that on that second string bend. So you're starting here. Same thing. Pre-bend, release. So on the first string note. So you're starting here. And you're releasing it. So you can try all those out. Oh, let's do a better one there. And you can do those quick ones. You could try a few quick ones together. So all I'm doing is 3 quick pre-bend and release. Pre-bend and release, pre-bend and release, pre-bend and release, but just 3 of them quickly. One right after the other. That takes some practice, but once you get it, you can try that out. It's kind of like a nice little sassy kind of sound. All we're doing here is just some basic things, and you can get all kinds of nice expressive sounds, ways to express yourself. So, okay, so we've got all those. Then I want to show you something really cool here. So we've been doing this all in the A minor, right? Pentatonic shape on the 5th fret. You can also do this same stuff with the same shape, just at a higher up place on the neck, on the 17th fret. So now you're up here, and now you're up here going to do the minor pentatonic on the 17th fret, but the same pattern with your fingers. And I'm actually, I guess I changed my fingering a little bit because it's so close together. I was using first, third finger, but you could still do first pinky if you want. Oops. So right, so that's the same. That's the same as just an octave higher. Oops. So now you can do all those exact same ideas that you were doing, and now all you want to do is put them an octave higher. So if we wanted to do like a, see, all of it sounds like, woo, your playing just got really good. All of a sudden you're doing kinds of new cool stuff, but no, you just did the same thing an octave higher. Right? So that's another little tool. Use all these little tools. Really good players have all kinds of little tools, and I don't know if you want to call them tricks, but like just different ideas. So you can be playing maybe a basic melody or something, basic idea, but you have all these ways to vary it. That's what makes it expressive. That's when you listen to a really good guitar player. They can do all kinds of cool stuff because they're just using all these different ideas. So they're just going to do, let's do some bends and then some notes and a pre-bend. So we got, see, isn't I think that's awesome. When you just do it an octave higher, it's all of a sudden you just went to a whole new world. But you did the same thing, basically. You didn't have to like think of a whole brand new idea. You just made it sound new. So just find your idea and then see if you can play it an octave higher at that shape, but starting at the 17th fret. Yeah, I think you'll have a lot of fun with that. And put all those things together. So you got the bends up, the bend and release, and you got them on all three strings. And you got the bend sandwich, and you got the bend at the beginning, bend at the end, and you got this octave higher. So now you can try all those together. Oh. So that's a nice one you can do. It's kind of bending up and then releasing. And actually, don't worry about that one. We didn't actually go over bend and release, and we might not have time for that. But you can do a bend up. Still get a nice cool sound. Okay, so then the next thing we're going to look at is we're going to take a look at bending going up the A minor natural, or the A natural minor scale, which has 7 notes instead of the 5 notes of the pentatonic. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, back to the octave. But the natural minor has, right? So it's got those notes. Da, 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 da. So the natural minor, if you don't have the half steps and whole steps memorized, you can just watch in the video and you'll get it. But basically you go up a whole step, and then half step, then a whole step, then a whole step, then a half step, then a whole step, then a whole step. So you got whole, then half, whole, half, whole. That's the way I think of it. You got whole, half, whole, half, whole. So whole, half, whole, half, whole. It's kind of easy way to memorize it. Eventually you just kind of memorize it just by playing it enough on the guitar. But so that's the natural minor scale, but we're going to use it, we're going to put bends into that scale, or we're going to play that scale with bends. So we're going to go. So instead of, sorry, I'm going to go. sorry. So you can kind of hear it actually going up the scale, and this is a really good way to check if your bends are in tune, if they've got the right pitch. If they have the right pitch, it will sound like you're playing the scale. And if they're not quite right, then you'll be able to tell because it won't sound like the minor scale. So you can kind of compare it to playing it without the bends. We're taking out bending the whole step from here to here just because it's kind of tricky. You can do it. Let's see. You can do it. It's kind of a tricky bend though on that way down there on the 2nd fret. So don't worry about that one. You can just play that one like that, but then bend the other ones. Okay? And so this one includes half step bends. So let's actually just do that real quick. A half step bend, it's like from here to here. That's a half step bend. All it means is you're just bending up from this note 1 half step up, which is the very next fret. So all the technique is the same for the full step bend. It's just smaller. So to get from here to here, it's just a smaller bend. So you don't have to bend as high, but you're still doing all the same motion with the wrist. And all this technique is all the same, and the finger placement's all the same. So this one trains you to go between half steps and whole steps. Because you got to do a half step, and then a whole step. So you got a half step right before a whole step. And then a half step, whole step again. And then 2 whole steps. So that's a really good one to try out. And then you can play around with it. Right? So just kind of play around on the whole steps and the half steps. Sometimes you can bend, sometimes just play in the scale. Then we're going to do the same thing with the pre-bend and release. Now we're going to do the A minor scale starting at the top of the scale, but on the 2nd string. So we're going to start at the root note, but the root note is a bit higher than my guitar actually goes, but it's going to be right here. But that doesn't matter because we're going to be starting with it bent up there. So this note, actually it's the octave higher than that one. It's going to sound like this. So you start there, and now you're going to release. So we're just going down the scale now, but this time we're starting with pre-bend. So you're starting at the highest note, down a whole step, down a whole step, down a half step, down a whole step, down a whole step, down a half step, down a whole step. So the thing about this one is you got to start at the right pitch. So if you got to know where the half steps and the whole steps are. So you got to know this first one. And again, you can watch the replay of the video if you're not sure, and you'll get it. You can just rewind it and watch it till you get it. And so you're just going to know we got a whole step, so you know where to start. And you know you got another whole step down. And then you know the half step, so you're not bending up quite as high. And you got a whole step now. And then you got a whole step. Now you got a half step. And you got a last whole step. So you just practice that one, and you can play around with that one too. And you can play around with all of those things. The last thing we'll look at is everything we learned, try putting it all together, and then you got a whole palette of ideas to play with. So you can try using those bends on the natural minor going up, and then on the natural minor coming down, like we were just doing, and then all those ideas on the bends on those 3 strings in that E shape of the minor pentatonic, and then using the bend sandwich, the bend at the beginning, bend at the end, putting all of those together and trying it out at that higher up octave. So if you put all those things together, then you can just kind of play around with it. So you got so those are all your ideas. Try them out. Practice them as often as you need to until you get them. And if you have any questions at all, go ahead and put them in the comment section on the replay. If you're watching the replay, let me know what you want to work on or what you're having trouble with, and I can kind of address that in a future live stream. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please go ahead and like the video if you thought it was helpful, and we'll look forward to seeing you at our next live stream.